Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show. Today I have with me Kasia. She's joining me live. I think it's a little bit late for you, Kasia. Sorry for that. But Kasia covers topics that I love personally, which is health tech, startups, and everything in between. So, Kasia, thank you very much for being on the show today. Can you just a little bit tell us about yourself and what you do?
Thank you very much for inviting me. I think it's a pleasure to be on your show. I am an advisor and mentor, also a founder and a small angel investor in healthcare startups. I am doing this after more than 30 years of career in the pharmaceutical, biotech, and medical device industry. But actually, during the pandemic, I reached the conclusion that I have to focus on innovation more, because innovation happens in smaller companies much faster than in big corporations.
Wow, I love when I hear these stories, and someone who makes the leap from corporate job to like full innovation startups. From your experience, Kasha, what do you think? Why do you think corporate are slow in innovation?
Well, based on my experience, I think there are many reasons, but a few probably come on top. And one is the risk aversion. I think bigger companies prefer better established platforms that they can optimize, both scientifically and economically. And since they have a lot of resources, they are usually good at that. But also, they really have to manage. Usually, these are public companies, so they have to manage the shareholders' incentives and media relations, sustain jobs for multiple thousands of people who work for them. So the risk aversion is, in my opinion, the first and foremost reason why the companies are like that. Also, just by sheer number of people and departments and the tendency to working in silos, I think the projects move slower in a big corporation. There are many more decision makers. There are more cumbersome processes. So I think this is the second main reason why innovations happen faster outside of big corporations.
So it's mainly like the bureaucracy also that exists there,
Yes.
right?
Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
definitely.
yeah, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely.
that's great. Now, Kasha, just can because I like what to research, and then learn about my guests. So, can you think of a time when you had to think out of the box to solve a problem, which was significant change in the healthcare sector? Because you are still also in this sector as well.
I think that I could tap to a couple of instances when I was still working for big companies. Before I even go to startups, because startups really solve big problems all the time, or try to. Not always successfully, but they try to. But what's very interesting is I spent many years working for vaccine manufacturers. And there are many countries that maybe do not have a very well developed public health vaccination programs. So vaccines initially are sold in out-of-pocket private markets. Obviously, they reach very small number of people, only the wealthy part of the population. And it takes years and years before the public health decides to implement a vaccine into the system. So what we were doing with some of the vaccines that were suitable for adults, actually in two companies where I used to work, we helped companies and employers to develop vaccination for their employees as a benefit and also as a way to prevent some infections that happen on a regular basis, like flu. So I think that developing this new business, it was really a new business model and a new type of benefits for employees. And I think this was really a way how me and the group of people that I worked with, we together collectively created a business model that didn't exist before. Obviously, together with employers who are interested. And I think it also shows that some of these innovations don't happen just because a company invented it. It happens in collaboration with customers. And I think that's
Right.
how it happened. It was
Yeah,
us
yeah.
and customers who collectively developed the processes. And very successfully, there are many countries now where in addition to the private market, out-of-pocket market, vaccines are considered a benefit for employees, and that's how they are adopted. Before, obviously, the public sector creates big vaccination programs.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Now, like when we talk about healthcare vertical in specific, we know that there are a lot of, I would say, pitfalls over there. So these pitfalls becomes a kind of unique challenges when it comes to innovation, especially because there are a lot of regulations, there are a lot of standards that exist. So what are your views on this, and how you think we can innovate in the health tech industry?
It's a very broad question because I think there are many ways how we can innovate in the health tech space. Uh, I think that there are. So first, maybe I'll tackle the question about regulations. I think
Yes.
our space is definitely highly regulated, and rightly so. I mean, the solutions that we develop must work as intended and cannot do harm to patients. So I think that the supervision of the regulatory authorities is very well intended and very useful. Uh, However, there are places in healthcare where this regulatory supervision is not necessary. It is, for example, the improvement of workflows.
Mm-hmm.
That can be, massive with the right use of AI, for example. There are some processes that can be improved, like medical adherence to physician recommendations through different applications that are based on behavioral sciences and technology. They don't require regulations. So I think there are ways ways to innovate in healthcare outside of the field that is regulated by FDA or other regulatory agencies in different countries. So that's one. I think the second aspect is it's a bit of a change of mindset. So on one hand, yes, we are totally dependent on regulatory agencies to put certain products on the market. But we also need to remember that the regulatory agencies are also partnering with us to develop some of these innovations. And
Mm-hmm.
if we can prove in our product development phase that our product is truly better than the alternatives, this is actually ending up in the label and becoming a very important competitive advantage. And I think we sometimes forget about that because we always see the hurdles and the costs of the regulatory process. But small tweaks to clinical development program or another product development program can increase the value of our product profile in the marketplace. And I
Mm.
think if we see this from this perspective, out of a sudden, it's not such a big hurdle anymore. It's actually a great opportunity because if my label is better than a competitor's label, I can actually talk about it in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if my label is not better than competitor's label, I cannot talk about competitive advantages.
Yeah.
So the most successful drugs or medical devices actually embraced this challenge and actually created labels that were highly differentiated versus competition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's it's good to hear like different aspects, because I told you like I'm interested in health tech because at the end of the day it touches on us, right? So um now, because you work with a lot of startups, Kasia, yourself, so
Yeah.
what are some of the recent, I would say, technological advancements you have seen, or you expect to be like also new trends that might come up in the near future?
I see many very promising products, but maybe I will tell you about the area that's close to my heart because it's related to communication, mental health, I'm a
Mm,
psychiatrist, by the way, by training. I did residency in psychiatry many
nice.
years ago. So I am really excited about the way how artificial intelligence can talk to a patient.
Mm,
Since I'm not talking only about the large language models, I'm talking more about sort of natural language processing applications that I used to deliver therapy in mental health. I am thinking about a startup where I am one of the founders, where we invested in a medical adherence startup that also will be talking to a patient, mostly delivering some education to address poor health literacy, but also there will be other aspects. And I think that, I've seen a study recently showing that patients actually preferred answers generated by large language models over answers generated by doctors because of empathy.
mm.
They were more empathetic, and because of the more thorough answers. So I'm not saying that large language models will replace doctors. I don't think they will. But I think that it's interesting how already in some aspects of interactions with patients, maybe addressing mental health, the AI and machine learning is becoming a partner for physicians and other clinicians.
That's really interesting because do you think it's also, you know, some people when they go to the, whether it's a psychiatrist or like even a normal physician, maybe they feel shy. Do you think also like this is one of the main motives? So they feel more comfortable to talk to a machine rather than talking to a, human being? Do you think this is
It
also one
might
of the
be.
reasons?
It might be.
Mm,
I am working with a startup that is specifically focusing on improving the communication between physicians and patients, basically by teaching physicians the science of persuasive communication. And I've seen this also myself in practice for many years. I think that there are obviously physicians who are great communicators, but we have to remember that they are not routinely taught communication in medical schools. So
mm,
frequently the communication is very, one-sided. A physician is telling a patient what to do. It's not trying to uncover if there are any concerns. So there are very few physicians who actually ask questions about patient concerns, and there are very few physicians who feel that they have time to address some of the concerns or misconceptions. But at the end of the day, only patients remember and understand only 20% of what physicians
mm.
told. So I see, on one hand, I see the opportunity to maybe include some of this communication training more consistently into medical studies. But I think the reality is that it probably will not happen very quickly. I think that solutions based on the natural language processing or large language models actually can somehow complement these deficiencies in communication between patient and physician or nurse. That are, again, sometimes even exacerbated by cultural aspects. Physicians are usually high in the societal hierarchy, and patients may just feel a little bit intimidated. They definitely feel they don't have this level of knowledge. So I think that there are many, many reasons why this communication doesn't always happen in the right way. And AI can help to complement these gaps, to fill these gaps with
Mhm.
some education, with some relationship that a patient can develop with the application. And uh, I think that's part of the future of how the AI will be used in medicine.
I love this approach because every single guest we spoke together about AI, and we always mentioned that using AI. And I like when you said it will not replace the doctor, right? So of course it will not replace the doctor. It's kind of an augmentation tool. So for a doctor who he or she they don't have the communication skills, as you said, so they can rely on an AI tool or technology, whether it's an LLM or it's an NLP or whatever,
Mhm.
that can help them in conveying the message. Now, I'm interesting to know in the hierarchy, or let's say because when we say health tech, it's not only the doctors, right? So
Of
doctors are
course.
one part of it. So where do you see also this kind of adoption possible? And let's talk about AI because it's the most forefront
Yeah.
nowadays. Like where we can see it in other areas also as well in the healthcare.
So I think that when we specifically look at what happens in the US, which by the way has the highest number of AI startups in healthcare, I think 1,400
Mm.
is the number that I remember from some recent presentations. Uh, the most of these solutions are approved in imaging field like radiology, some dermatology aspects,
Mhm.
because AI is very good at reading images. And I think that's probably where AI is the most used right now. I personally would like to see AI to become more like an equalizer in terms of how we treat patients. For example, where I really think the big need is in areas where healthcare is not so accessible. For example, we have many rural areas in the US, but we also have rural areas in other countries. We have very remote areas in other countries. Sometimes there are areas where you don't even have a primary care physician. So
Right.
maybe some nurses, or maybe we have only primary care, and then a primary care physician who is really the cornerstone of healthcare, and probably the most important physician, to be honest. But they obviously cannot have the specialized knowledge of specialist physicians. So access to AI that is reading MRI, access to AI that can, help to diagnose some skin lesions, access to AI that can do many other things. I don't know, even robotic surgery that could be facilitated remotely. Uh,
Mhm.
I think all these aspects can really help to improve patient outcomes in areas where currently patients do not have as good outcomes as us living in urban areas where the access to physicians is actually very easy. So, and I think that this aspect of AI maybe is not yet fully understood. It's still in the future, but it really should be embraced by developing countries and remote areas in developed countries where healthcare is not as good as maybe in other places.
Yeah, while you're talking, I just imagined, a scene where maybe it's a village, right, somewhere in the world, in any country. And as you said, they have this only doctor there who's kind of a generalist GP.
Yeah,
And someone comes with some symptoms, and this guy doesn't know. And, he goes to an AI and asks, like, this is, and then the AI will describe the situation. Like, it could be, I mean, lifesaver in this situation. And this is, why I love technology, because
yeah.
technology, and especially converged with health tech, it can help us. Now, because you mentioned you had background also in pharmaceuticals, Kasia, mm, like, of course, we've seen studies, and we've seen some researchers using AI and other technologies in developing like drugs faster, or maybe developing vaccines faster. But what I'm interested to know, do you think, and maybe it's kind of a let's say moment it would be, but do you think one day AI will be able, to help us to get rid of all these diseases that are like really tough, let's say like cancer, and like some what all these big diseases, do you think that AI or technology in general in health tech can let us reach a moment where we will not hear anymore about this disease?
Maybe. I am certainly very positive about this possibility. And I think it already will start happening soon. Why? Because, first of all, we already mentioned diagnosis of diseases that
Mm-hmm.
may be more difficult for primary care. But there are diseases that are difficult for everyone, rare diseases. Physicians learn about a few hundred diseases during medical school, but out there in the real world, we have several thousands of diseases. And a patient with a rare disease usually waits on average for 7 years to be diagnosed because nobody knows their disease. And there are already attempts to add some diagnostic tools to the electronic health records that can actually screen the symptoms, screen lab results, and in situations when diagnosis is not so straightforward, actually propose a few rare diseases that might be the reason for the symptoms. And then obviously it's up to a physician to continue the diagnostic process and find out which of the rare diseases it is. So this is one that is happening already in many places. But I also think that AI will be very helpful in precision medicine because it helps us to cluster different types of patients. So for example, we usually have diabetes type 1 and diabetes type 2. But physicians are sure and researchers are sure that within diabetes 1 and diabetes 2, there are multiple different diseases. So far, it was very difficult for a human being to analyze, thousands and thousands of studies that try to identify these different biomarkers. And it's almost impossible for a human being to really analyze all this data. But it is actually very easy for AI. And it's already helping to cluster, looking at available literature for a given disease. AI is already helping to cluster patients into logical groups based on symptoms or biomarkers that we wouldn't even have ability to analyze. And so I believe that once this clustering of patients into subgroups is combined with drugs that work for these subgroups, this will be a much higher level of precision medicine and will be much better treatments from the efficacy and possibly safety perspective for patients. I think that this revolution of identifying patient subgroups based on symptoms, biomarkers, microbiome, what have you, which is basically big data, will help to then target treatments in a much more precise way.
Yeah, this is amazing. Like some music to my ears, I would say. Now, Kasia, shifting a little bit gears. Sorry, we rarely see someone like, who used to work in corporate, especially in healthcare, shifting to entrepreneurship and startups. What was the motive for you to do this shift?
First of all, I believe that human ingenuity will help to solve all our biggest problems, but we have to help it. I think that, as we discussed, most breakthrough innovations happen in startups, and yet only 10% of startups are successful. And to me, it's a big waste because they are not only unsuccessful because the product failed in clinical trials. There are many, many other reasons for the lack of success. And I think that I can help with some of them because of my experience. I can help with, commercialization. I can help with market development. I can help with thinking through the enterprise strategy, which should be, I think even small startups sometimes focus too much on product development. I think they have such a tunnel vision and think that this is exactly what they have to do right now at this very moment and nothing else matters. But everything matters to a degree, and the strategy has to be properly developed so that it makes logical sense. And the commercialization strategy does influence the product development in many ways. So an inexperienced founder who may be a brilliant scientist sometimes does not fully understand why he or she should think about commercialization so early. And I can help with all these processes, and especially the development of the strategy, enterprise strategy, which is really something that I've done in the past. And that's why I decided to work in this space, because most founders do not have my experience. Now, on the contrary, they have different experience in product development that maybe I don't have. But they do not have commercialization experience. They do not have the market discovery experience. They do not have the execution experience, scaling the company experience. So, and these are all elements that are necessary for success.
That's amazing. And this, like a couple of questions that came to my mind now. So just for people who are, maybe as an investor or maybe as founders thinking about the health care industry. Um, so, so I can understand from you that the same concept of doing market research, having product market fit, and all these stay applicable here. And the reason I'm asking this, like, because in healthcare you are dealing with like life science, right? So this is life
Yes.
science usually, and then you build a product out of it. Whereas, for example, if someone build I don't know, a marketplace to sell and buy, it's like something which is more commercial by nature. So is it like something special like founders they need to know when it comes to healthcare, which is different maybe from other areas out there?
I think there are similarities and there are a few differences.
Mm-hmm.
I think, when I was thinking about how to bring this knowledge to founders who are mostly scientists or engineers or doctors, I thought about, kind of avoiding the marketing lingo and really explaining things in terms that are easier to understand. And I divided this knowledge that a founder needs to have into 4 aspects. I call it DIVE, for discovery,
Mm-hmm.
innovation, value, and execution. And I think it is less risky for a founder to dive into developing their startup if they know how to do these 4 things. So discovery is about market discovery. And
Mm-hmm.
I think here the process is very similar among healthcare startups and other type of startups. We need to understand the customer. We need to understand the environment, regulatory environment, legal environment, political environment. We need to understand the patient journey. So then this is where maybe the difference starts. Because we have so many different stakeholders in healthcare, but at the end of the day, many solutions are meant for patients to treat them
Right.
or prevent diseases. And understanding the patient journey can actually help to, first of all, focus on the right opportunity, and secondly, develop the right product for this opportunity. So I think that's maybe a little different than in other areas where we mostly focus on existing buying processes and workflow processes within organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And discovery never ends. I think the discovery continues throughout the life cycle of the product because we keep learning new things all the time. So that's one. The innovation is how to develop the innovative product. And the product profile here, maybe again, there are some similarities because the product needs to be differentiated from the competition. But there are
Right.
also differences because a product profile in healthcare is again built through the label. Because we are such a regulated space, we cannot say anything that's outside of the label. We can only promote things that are within the label, right? And that's what all regulatory agencies in the world ensure, that pharmaceutical industry does not say anything that is outside of the label. So actually,
Mm-hmm.
our regulatory process is not only aimed at getting regulatory approval, it's also aimed at creating this foundation for our marketing communication. And I think that's what
Mm-hmm.
the difference is between a healthcare product and a product that is not regulated by healthcare authorities. And also, innovation is also about IP. It's also about the user experience. But these are a little bit different, a little bit similar to our technologies.
Yeah.
And then value is for marketing value. And I think here the process is very similar to other technologies. It's really how do you create marketing strategy, segmentation, targeting, customer personas, messaging platform, value proposition. Again, the only difference is that we have more stakeholders. So at the end of
Yep.
the day, we usually work between policymakers, payers, regulators, opinion leaders, prescribers, and patients. So at least 6
Mm-hmm.
audiences for any given healthcare product. Now, the execution is also very similar than in other companies. It consists of go-to-market strategy and building capabilities. So I would say, again, the capabilities in a healthcare company may be a little different than in a classical technology companies, but the process itself is very similar. So I think that the DICE framework really helps to kind of put in place these different things that a company and their founders have to do and have to be aware. And it helps to develop this, what I said before, this enterprise strategy that really does not have any blind spots.
Yeah.
And I think in
This,
health it was important. One blind spot can kill the product, because a product may have a great label, but if payers don't pay for it, it will not
mm,
successfully. If clinicians don't feel like it's adding a lot of value, it will not be prescribed, even if it's reimbursed. If patients cannot take it because it's difficult, for example, it's only injectable and they have to spend hours in the clinic, many patients will not come. So you see, every stakeholder has to be, the needs of every stakeholder have to be addressed. And I
yeah.
think that's the most difficult in healthcare products.
Yeah, amazing. Like you really, it's a master class, I would call it, for building a startup in healthcare. And just the other question, which is like maybe it's like straightforward, but do you think, of course, the core team, they should have the knowledge? I mean, at least some of the founders, they need to have a degree in medicine, or maybe in pharmacology, sorry, right? So am I correct? So you need someone who knows about the inside of the industry. Am I correct?
I think that's helpful. I think that it can be, I think that it's obviously ideal if you have all these degrees on the team. It's sometimes not possible, right, or not practical, especially for smaller companies. I think it can be complemented by having the right advisors. And I think it's very important to have not only technological, financial, customer knowledge, but also clinical knowledge. So having
Mm-hmm.
physicians as advisors, or having people, it depends, having people who work in pharmaceutical industry as advisors, depending obviously on the product, is actually very important. And I speak with a lot of physicians who are very interested in helping startups. So I think there could be a very good match here between startups and clinicians.
Mm-hmm. And is there any, because for people who I hope that might be watching or listening to this later on, who are maybe doctors, psychologists, pharmacists, whatever, is there anything, they need to have in their character to be able to become successful part of a startup, or being a successful founder, I would say?
I think it's important to be humble, understand that you don't know everything,
Mm-hmm.
and try to learn. So generally, I recommend growth mindset. I think that physicians usually know a lot, but in their very specific field. And again, sometimes they think they may know more about commercialization than they really do. So I think I would caution against being too, too sure that they actually understand everything about healthcare, because they are in the center of healthcare. So frequently there is this temptation to think that they really know everything. So a little bit of humility and growth mindset, I think, goes a long way, and I will recommend that. And obviously, continuous learning. And there are places to learn. There are organizations that help in learning. There are incubators that help in learning. There are organizations that match physicians with startups. So yeah, there is this kind of growing ecosystem of helping physicians to diversify what they do
Nice.
if they are interested in helping startups.
This is very nice. And just a quick comment on this, because when I started my career, I was working in IT department in a university, and I see the academia people really sometimes they have these cool ideas, and maybe they don't have the know-how to turn this into something useful, right? So whether they
Sure.
are engineers, they are doctors, whatever. Kasia, as you know, we come to the end. I have a very famous question. Is there anything you wished I asked you, and how did you answer
You asked me a lot of questions, and
that?
I think we did cover many topics that I find very interesting, and I'm glad that you find
I mean,
them to be very interesting too. Uh, I think that we covered everything. I don't think there is a question that I wish you asked me and we didn't.
Oh, thank you very much. Where the audience can find more about you, Kasha?
I think LinkedIn is the best place. I have
Mhm.
a very thorough profile, and I publish a lot of content within these topics that we discussed. Obviously, this podcast will be published there as well,
Right.
because I really want the people who follow me to get this knowledge firsthand from me. So I think LinkedIn profile is absolutely the best way, and I will very gladly connect with anyone who wants to connect with me, and we can start from there. I welcome messages on LinkedIn, and we'll be happy to talk.
That's great, Kasha. I will make sure that I will put the link in the episode description also as well. So if you want to connect with Kasha, feel free to do so. Well, Kasha, thank you very much for these valuable information that you provided and all the hints, I would say, especially when it came to the part you described, how to have a successful healthcare startup. And again, it's the beauty of the thing, it's applicable everywhere in the world. So it's
It's
applicable
true.
in the US. It might be applicable in Canada. It's applicable here in Dubai also as well. And last thing I want to say before we close is I wish to see myself personally more startups in healthcare. I know that there's a big hype about the super apps and the fintech, but I am a big believer that technology should also one of the main purpose of technology is to serve us humans, and I wish that we see a lot. And Kasha, you're doing fantastic job over there. I really enjoyed what you are doing and the way you explained it. And as usual, as we come to the end of the episode, thank you very much for tuning in today. If you have any questions, any feedback about this episode or the show in general, you know how to reach me out. Recently, I put all the handles so you can see them all the time. So you can reach out to me. Mainly, I'm on LinkedIn if you want to drop me a message. If you are interested to be a guest, also, same as Kasha was a guest today, don't be shy. Reach out to me. I would be more than happy to discuss and arrange for it. And it doesn't matter where you are in the world. So Kasia, she's joining from the US. I had guests from New Zealand, from Australia, from everywhere. So I can handle all time zones. And because this show, I'm trying to make it global. It's not targeted for a certain geography. And thank you for tuning in. We'll meet again in next episode. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.